continue our discussion on the Cold War. I will be giving out an excerpt from the textbook that we're reading called Paul Boyer's The Enduring Vision, A History of the American People.
Oh, man.
Ooh, that sucks.
Well, I know this textbook can be difficult and sometimes quite dull, but I'm here to give you some strategies for not only getting through this tough text, but understanding it too.
Yeah, now'll be the day.
Let's take a look first at how the textbook is organized. Everybody open your textbooks. It consists of 33 chapters with roughly 4 sections each. There is a table of content with the chapter titles in large letters and the sections in a smaller font. You can also find the index in the back of the book, which can help you locate the pages of specific details. It is important for students to know the organization of the text so they know what to expect when reading the required text. In social studies, just like in any other subject, the required text is usually divided in some sort of way, whether it be chapters, frames, or acts.
Vocab, it makes it so difficult to follow the chain of events. I find it hard to understand what I'm reading.
Well, when I first read the textbook, I also had difficulties with the vocabulary. You don't need to know every single word in the text. You can use your context clues from within the passage or look to the glossary to find definitions for most of the key terms. Many students, when seeing difficult vocabulary, have an urge to simply abandon the text altogether. Remember to reassure students that you too had difficulties with the vocabulary the first time reading. In social studies, the glossary comes in handy because the terms explained are usually specifically content-based and necessary for making sense of the time
If I'm
period.
confused about a word, I could just look back here?
Yes, exactly. I also want to mention the author of the book, Paul S. Boyer. He is a professor of history at the University of Wisconsin and earned his PhD from Harvard University.
Wow, he must really know what he's talking about.
Explains that telling your students some background information on the author can entice the students to read their work. This technique can help in all subject areas. We will be reading pages 945 to 946 from the textbook. It is an excerpt from Life magazine concerning the Cold War. To get students interested and ultimately sticking to a text that can be rather dull, choose a few pages that you yourself find compelling to read together. In social studies textbooks, you can find several pages within the chapters with primary sources from magazines or newspapers. This can be interesting to present a different perspective on a certain topic. I'm going to start reading from the beginning of the text. Okay, everybody, follow along. Early in January 1951, a Los Angeles construction company staged a major groundbreaking ceremony for the television cameras to promote its backyard family atomic bomb shelters. So, what is the significance about the year 1951? Why would families need shelters in their backyards? Despite the reassuring tone of the ceremony, atmospheric nuclear testing and the possibility of nuclear war troubled Americans. So, the shelters would help from a nuclear war, but why exactly is nuclear testing such a threat to the safety of Americans?
Don't you know?
Don't I know what?
The answers to your questions.
Well, I know the answers now because I've read the book and this article a couple of times, but I didn't know the answers to these questions the first time I read it. It speaks on how it is important for students to know that you are the expert in the room, but it is also important that you model what it was like for you as a first-time reader of the piece, as was done before with the vocabulary. It is equally important for you to help them see how your thinking changes as you become more familiar with the text, like asking questions during it. Okay, continuing. Tales of the dire effects of radioactivity and images of mushroom-shaped clouds dominated the public conscience. For instance, the first time I read this article, I didn't understand what the author meant by mushroom-shaped clouds. As I continued reading, I understood that when an atomic bomb explodes, that would be what it would look like.
Whoa, so there could have been a huge explosion in America? That's intense. How did people react to this threat?
Good question. I'm going to write it on the board.
Which country is threatening us again?
Good question again. I'm going to write it on the board. It is helpful if questions are written down so they can be returned to later. Authentic questions can drive the reading and guide the learning well after the lesson is finished. Notice how at first I started asking questions aloud. Then it encouraged students to follow, to look more into the text and ask their own questions. Now let's take a few moments to read the text on our own and jot down your own questions on the side. Okay, class, everyone, let's add your own questions to the chart that we made. Great!
What does the FCDA stand for?
Yes?
Weren't we allies with the Russians in the Second World War? What happened to their alliance?
Oh, that's a great connection. connection that you made. I'm going to add that to the board.
You can notice how students begin to make connection to previous information when formulating their question for the text at hand. This shows the progress that us as teachers are looking.
I'm so interested in the Cold War, I can't wait to read the rest of the textbook.